today.
And so are we, apparently.
Apparently.
Anyway, welcome to Monday Night Magic.
Messages.
It's going to be a bit of an interesting one. Well, interesting. Depends on your tastes. I'm going to be talking about Leylines. Going to be talking about a little bit of history and development of certain cards.
And I'm going to be off to the side here, pretty much just chatting.
Yep. So I'm going to be going through one of my old decks that I made, almost as sort of a joke, meme deck, whatever you want to call it, about 15 years ago. Man, does time fly. Well, I guess technically that's probably closer to 14 years ago. But still, yeah. So there was a bunch of developments over the game's history. And, well, here, this is a good place to start. Let's flip it around and start looking at some cards. I can talk to you just as well, and they're probably more interesting to look at than my face. Mm-hmm. So there we go. Let's angle this a little. The ceiling is not great either. All right, so anybody else remember these three? No, not the bottom three here, although Deck on Blackblade was a favorite when I first started in Chronicles. These guys just seem so powerful. Pretty much nothing today, but Urza's Saga. The Silver Age of Magic the Gathering, when they started to redevelop really powerful cards from Alpha down through 4th, 5th edition or so. They were just steadily cutting the power level. They made one round of cuts and made revised. They made another round of cuts, went down to 4th edition. Ice Age came out, and arguably the overall power level of Ice Age was even lower than 4th edition, depending on the type of cards you're looking for. It was, they were trying to manage and not let too many of these really powerful cards out. And then, after they got the block formats going, they started to reintroduce some stronger cards. Tempest introduced a couple of gems, like they brought back Time Walk, except now it costs 5. But still that strong effect is back in the game. They brought back Strip Mine, except now it couldn't target basics. You got Wasteland.
Ooh, that's
a cool dragon. They brought back Lotus Petal. Yeah, that is a cool dragon. That's a reprint of a Mercadian Masks card. So that's a little bit out of the window I'm talking about here.
Sorry, I just like dragons.
Yeah. But yeah. When you got into the Weatherlight Saga, we got into Urza's block. Here's 4 very well-known Urza's block cards. You got, and again, each with 4 different colors even. So you got Yawgmoth's Will, one of the most broken recursive cards there was, especially since they'd already made cards like Lion's Eye Diamond in Mirage, that already made Lotus Petal. Dark Ritual was pervasive still through this time.
Sorry, you got one of Invincible's books.
Very strong. And you had the 3 lands here. Now, Stronghold and Weatherlight block. You had sort of a black land that was still quite used in Volrath's Stronghold. The black land in this cycle directly wasn't as strong, neither was the red. But these 3 all caught a lot of people's attention. They're very similar and parallel cards for their 3 colors. Tap a blue for the number of artifacts you've got in play, for the number of creatures you control, for the number of enchantments you control. Yeah. The one that caught fire immediately when Urza's Saga released was the Tolarian Academy. I still use this to this day in my my blue vintage deck. It's just such a beast. And when it first came out, you could run 4 copies, so it was very, very common to get early starts and power out all kinds of insane stuff. This is the one that took the tournament scene by storm. You had Stroke of Genius, kills to wipe out your opponent's deck using this thing. Also involving cards like Time Spiral. You could do Palinchron and High Tide and all kinds of nonsense. There was just lots going on with this one. And the legendary rule could actually help you because at first, you play that second copy. Well, I think how it worked was you could kill off the old one and just use it again. This card was absolutely crazy, and so it got restricted in short order. It didn't take them too long, but man, I remember those days, and it was definitely the strongest of the three, which is incredible to think of because now it is the least demand of the three, as reflected by the pricing. That's what really struck me when I was going to put this deck together, was just how much things have shifted, even since the last time I built this deck. And we'll get to this in a second. But the second of the three, which is still unrestricted as far as I know in Eternal formats, is Gaia's Cradle. 1 green for each creature you control. Very strong. Very popular in Commander as well. One of my greatest regrets in terms of card acquisitions coming about with this card. Thanks for coming out, Ryan. Glad to see you're here. Back when I was at university, there was a card shop that I frequented, and DCI promo cards were still a fairly new thing. And a lot of people weren't really a fan of foils because they tended to curl up and they were a bit of a marked card and things like that. But one time I went by a local card shop that I frequented's singles case, and they had 3 Gaia's Cradle DCI foil cards sitting in the case for $13 a piece. And I considered them and decided, nah, I don't need to drop the extra $40 right now, and left them sitting there, and was kicking myself for years afterwards because, man, those things are worth a pretty penny ever since. Would have been nice to have almost a play set. Well, that would have given me a play set, but anyway. But I've still got one of these, and I still pull it out and use it in some of my decks. Very well known, probably the best well known and infamous these days. But I've been shocked at the success, or the popularity, or whatever it's doing, of this one lately. That it surpassed Tolarian Academy. Because this one, from its release, while it's got the same sort of structure, artifacts, there's lots of cheap mana accelerating artifacts that you can power this. That's why it got broken so quickly. Creatures are all over the place. And some of them are mana dorks, and some of them are things that help you, accelerate. Very easy to use and abuse, that one. Enchantments are another thing. There are some very powerful enchantments. There are some cheap enchantments, but not a lot. And you usually don't want to be playing a lot of enchantments. So this one really took some time for the potential to grow. But this turns out to be one of the key cards in the development of the deck that I'm going to be looking at today. So I just thought I'd have to come into this binder anyway to grab it, so we could talk about the others in the sort of series, I guess you'd say there, briefly. But Sarah's Sanctum, there was always the potential, but this remained a fairly inexpensive card for a long time. And when I started doing a little research for this video, I was shocked to find that this thing has now surpassed even Tolarian Academy for the amount you'd have to go and pay for a copy now. And I'm rather glad that when I put this deck together 14 years ago, or around that time, maybe a little before, I went and picked up a play set of these when they were still fairly cheap. So,
what is the one that I was saying that Void needs to see?
We'll get there.
I know, but I'm gonna tell him in case he's not in chat.
Leyline of the Void.
Oh.
But yeah, So today we're going to be looking at Leylines. And as you can tell, Leylines, by their very nature, were a great boon to Sarah's Sanctum. I'm sure there's other things that have come since that have also helped increase it. But the first wave of Leylines, you see this was printed in 98. The first wave of Leylines didn't hit until several years later. Let's pull out some of the... We're going to be working with... These are actually, I think, the very first set of black back sleeves I ever got. I switched to matte ones a while later. They're not as easily marked, although this one's definitely showing its age a little bit. But these shiny, glossy ones just wore so quickly, and they showed things like dings and scratches far more, and it was easy for them to get more marked, basically. But for casual decks, that's fine. I don't really care that much. But anyway, this would become one of the linchpins of this deck we're doing today. Where are we here?
I'm trying to recruit people.
All right, let's take a look.
I never liked the glossy sleeves.
Yeah, like I said, it was my first set of black backs. I used to just play with penny sleeves initially, but again, they're no good for tournaments really, because if you've got a card with any sort of defect, you really need some sort of opaque back sleeves to counter allegations of, marking cards in your deck. So let's get to the beginning. The first 5 Leylines that were ever released came out in Guild Pact, which was the second set, I believe, in Ravnica block.
I wouldn't know.
So, was it second or third? I think it was second set in Ravnica block. So 2006. So that's a full 8 years after Urza's block. And immediately I saw potential in these. Not enough potential.
That's Void's card.
Yep, there's Leyline of the Void. Leyline of the Void, of these first 5, was by far the most popular initially, and became used in tournament decks somewhat regularly. I don't think this is updated, but that's okay. You can see things.
That's because I went on to Discord.
So yeah.
Sorry.
They've got some similarities. These first 5, there was 1 for each color. 4 casting costs, 2 of the color and 1, same in all the colors, and all have just a global enchantment that sits on the table. If Leyline of the Void is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it in play. So you're not even casting it. It can't be counterspelled. It just starts on the board if it's in your opening hand. And this one's effect is, if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard, remove it from the game instead. So this is an anti-reanimation graveyard shenanigan type card, and there's been a lot of that for a long time, so this was definitely a popular tournament card for a while. There was the black one. Here's the red one. Leyline of Lightning. Whenever you play a spell, you may pay an extra colorless mana. If you do, Leyline of Lightning deals 1 damage to target player. So it has to be to a player, but you can pay 1 to deal an extra 1 damage each time this triggers. Whenever you play a spell, if you've got extra mana kicking around. Then you've got Leyline of Life Force. Creature spells can't be countered. Again, if you're very worried about counter spells, some people like this, but usually if you're playing a green beat down creatures type deck, this isn't the way most people tried to address that problem. Creature tokens get +1/+1, again in the right deck, can be a useful effect.
The chat froze already on the phone.
I just told you that.
Sorry.
Anyway, that was the first white Leyline. And Leyline of Singularity. All non-land permanents are legendary. Now, I'll talk about this in a second, but this is probably one of the more problematic leaf lines for the deck I was building. But at the time of Guild Pact, you know, hey, if you're looking at Sarah's Sanctum and trying to figure out how to make use of it, having enchantments that just start on the board for free make this a far more appealing card. Unfortunately, there just wasn't a critical mass of them yet, but the idea was there. And there was other, white especially has had many cheap enchantments like land tax and things which can come out and help it along too, but there we go. So there was a kernel of an idea. But there really wasn't enough to make it work until the second wave of Leylines came out. And that didn't land until M11. So all the way in 2010. So in 2010, we got the base sets had changed to the, Magic 2010, Magic 2011, and so on for the next
JD
almost decade, I believe.
How are you?
These were the baseline sets, and they put a set of lead lines in them. And they were mostly new lead lines. The only one that was a repeat, where'd it go? Was Leyline of the Void. They reprinted Leyline of the Void, which was the most popular of the originals, so I can understand why. And they gave us 4 new ones for the other colors. Leyline of Punishment. Players can't gain life. Damage can't be prevented. In red, that can be useful to counter certain strategies, although life gain was never the most popular strategy in sort of competitive play, although it was usually a nice bonus on things like, Lightning Helix back in Ravnica block, for example. But, there were lots of little extra incremental life gain cards that did see their way into play. And this would help put a stop to those. Leyline of Vitality. Now, this is probably the most beneficial one in this particular build in some respects, because it's actually got an effect that we can get some use out of. Creatures you control get +0/+1. Hey, an extra toughness for free isn't bad. And when a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain 1 life. A little more random in that sense, but certainly that first part. Then we've got Leyline of Sanctity. As I recall, when this second wave landed, this one generated the most excitement. You can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponent controls. This stops lots of shenanigans as well.
I like the picture.
Yeah. And again, the same casting cost set up just for the different colors. Same conditions for what Leylines do. Just put them into play for free if they're in your opening hand. And then Leyline of Anticipation. You may cast non-land cards as though they had flash. So yeah, basically all your cards, excluding lands,
that art is really nice too,
can be cast at instant speed. That's an interesting effect for sure.
I want that on my wall.
But now we had 2 printings. If you don't count the double, 9 different Leylines. This is getting enough to a critical mass where the deck idea came to fruition. So, back in Urza's block, you also had a fun little card. I'm going to have to sort all these. Called Opalescence. Another enchantment. Same casting cost as the Leylines, but doesn't have the Leyline effect, obviously. Each other global enchantment, which just means an enchantment which isn't enchanting a specific permanent. So it's not an enchant creature or an enchant land or whatever. It's just an enchantment sitting there. Is global enchantment. Is a creature with power and toughness each equal to its converted mana cost. It's still an enchantment. So all these enchantments become enchantment creatures And if their casting cost is 4, like this one's, and okay, each other, so it doesn't count itself, but just taking it as an example, if you had 2 copies, they would affect each other. Enchantment's cost is 4, it would be a 4/4 creature. All the Leylines, even though they're free, if they're in your opening hand, their casting cost is 4. So you've got the basic hull for an idea here is you would want to see one of each of these in your opening hand, and then basically 4 or 5 random Leylines. Didn't even matter what their effects were as long as they didn't gum things up, and there's a potential there, which I'll get to in a second. And you would go, oh, look at my opening hand. There's, 7 cards in it, so I'm short 1, but whatever. I can drop these 4 onto the battlefield for free before the game even starts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on my first turn, I can play the Serra's Sanctum, and it'll tap for 4 mana because there's 4 Leylines. And oh, look, here's my Opalescence. All these Leylines are now 4/4 creatures that started the turn in play, so they don't even have summoning sickness.
You think you'd have some people that be like, oh, he's here. Nope. And then they kind of go away.
This is a glass cannon, one-trick pony type deck, at least how it was originally conceived.
Okay.
Either you get the right opening hand that you can make it work, or you don't, and if you don't, you're in trouble.
Okay. This is a scary... I don't...
If you do, there are ways to stop it as well. Having a bunch of, 4/4 creatures on the board first turn is scary, no question. But there are ways that they can be stopped.
I think I just freak out and run away.
But this is the basic idea of the deck. And once we got a second printing of Leylines, it became feasible. And I did try it out for a little while. So some of these cards, like I said, trying to track this stuff down now is getting progressively harder. But they keep printing Leylines. So now there's even more options for which Leylines you could get into your deck. So I'm going to go through and rebuild this deck basically and see what we've got and see how I can tweak it to improve it. Because I've seen a few other ideas and I've come across some other cards. Like, for example, last week when I went through Return to Ravnica, there was a card in there that caught my eye, which could help adding a second trick to the deck so that it's not a one-trick pony. It's got a backup plan, which might just bail you out if you don't get the thing going. You've got another option, which is always a handy thing. So, in order to get at least 4 Leylines in your opening hand of 7, you want more than half the deck to be Leylines. So there's that. And this is the one that can trip you up. Like I said, Leyline of Vitality, this has got probably the most useful ability. Just passively, all those 4/4s become 4/5s if you got a Leyline of Vitality. Little extra toughness doesn't hurt. Not a huge deal either way. But this one, all non-land permanents are legendary. This can be a problem, because if you got 2 of them in your opening hand, you can only play 1. Likewise, if you have 1 of these and 2 of any other Leyline in your opening hand, you'll only be able to play 1 of them. So this Leyline, I've never been happy with running, but I've kind of had to and just hope that I never get more than 1 of it. And if I do, I don't get multiples of anything else. But it is a little bit troublesome, and eventually I want to phase it out. But for now, that's how the deck was. So, which...
Oh, no.
Oh, no?
No, I'll talk to you later about it.
All right. So, I've got a mixture of sleeves here, so I want to make sure at least they all match. So you got the 4. That's a 30-year deck if you run 4 copies of each 60-card deck. That's 20 cards if you got 4 copies of each of those in the set. Leyline of the Void wasn't available, so this would be definitely over half if you're running the other 4 copies of each, which I believe I was. We've got our Opalescences, and because this deck is so heavily weighted around Serra's Sanctum, not only did you want the 4 copies of that, you wanted ways to search up more of them if you didn't immediately get it in your opening hand. I experimented with a few things. One of the cards I experimented with, as I recall, was Serum Powder, which was out by this time. But Serum Powder is a weird one because you're putting a card in your deck that you hope you don't draw. Because if you do draw it, you're basically just mulliganing for free and drawing a new card and hoping to get something else. I never really liked that. I mean, technically, it does help you get the hand you need more easily, but it's not something I really want to be doing. Excuse me. So there's our 4 Sanctums, there's our 4 Opalescences.
Oh my goodness.
So, let's see how many of these. Can I back this up just a little more so I can get me? I don't have enough space here.
Outside or inside?
Last I saw him, I think he was outside. Okay. Let's see if I can get more of this in view here. So let's just see what I've got to work with here. I think they should all... Oh, there's a forest. We'll get to that in a minute. And crop rotation. So this was some of the other alternate lands. Because if I have a forest and a crop rotation in my hand, I can drop the forest and play this immediately. Sacrifice the forest, search your library for a land card, and put that land into play. Shuffle your library. And it... right into play. Replacing the land I sacrificed and usable that turn. Great way to find my Sanctum if I get a forest and a crop rotation instead. So basically, most of my other mana in the deck would be providing green if I'm going that route. There's our Leyline of Sanctities, more Leyline of the Voids, Leyline of Singularity, some sleeves that I'd pulled other cards out of while I was building. Here's some extra forests and penny sleeves as needed. We can use those to fill some places in the Leyline of Life Force. Another crop rotation. As I recall, crop rotation was never restricted. So I'm pretty sure if I'm playing on vintage rules, and this is casual vintage, obviously not going to be a tournament quality deck. Obviously not. That's just not happening with this deck. It's a casual, but powerful if it works, type deck. Not one I would encourage anyone to take to a tournament.
Boo, but my iPad is slowing down.
I did like the location of these little dots on these cards. This was probably the most out of the way. Most other cards, they're sort of here, which blocks power and toughness viewing. On Star Wars CCG cards, having it right in the corner here was problematic at times. It would block the either deploy or attrition value, but not the case for Magic the Gathering. So it looks like I've still got 4 copies of each, except I pulled a Leyline of Sanctity out for one of my commander decks. I had a straight white deck, so that one came out. Here's another old sleeve, and put that back in right away. And then we'll be up to our Leylines. Now, like I said, most of these effects don't directly help or hinder you in this deck's plan A. But looking around, I've noticed that another combo deck, which became quite popular after the release of Leyline of the Void, was to run Leyline of the Void alongside Helm of Obedience. Helm of Obedience is even older than the Serra Sanctum. It came out in 1996. This is part of from Alliances. This is basically part of the first block that Magic ever produced, and the history of that block is strange to begin with, because Ice Age basically just got one expansion in the early days, and then years later they decided to complete the block by making a third set for it years later, when packs of the original two were getting hard to find. So, but Helm of Obedience, when the set first released, as I recall, was the second most sought after card in the set. This was on the heels of Ice Age. Ice Age had introduced Jester's Cap, and it was, at the time of its release, the most popular card in Ice Age. So this was something a little bit similar. 4-cost artifact that you could pay and tap to do something to mess with your opponent's deck. Jester's Cap let you look through their deck, pull 3 cards that you thought were going to be troublesome, and just out of the game. This let you steal one of your opponent's creatures. In practice, you usually ended up with something that wasn't worth the effort. But the idea was so inspiring that at launch, this was like a $15 card, and that was the second most valuable card in the set, and people liked it. And I always thought it was a fun, flavorful card. I tried running it a bit, but its value tanked. When it wasn't until they released Leyline of the Void in 2006 that this became a 2-card combo to win the game piece, at which point its value started to go up again. And it's still, well, no, there's other cards in the set now. If you're opening a pack of alliances these days, what you want to see is probably Lake of the Dead or Force of Will would be your top 2 cards. There's some other cards over the years which have gone up and down, which probably rival it as well, but those are the 2 big ones, and this one is somewhere down the line, but probably in the top 10. But yeah, pay X and tap it, put the top card of opponent's library into his or her graveyard. Continue doing this until you have put X cards or a creature card into that graveyard, whichever occurs first. If the last card put into the graveyard is a creature card, bury Helm of Obedience and put the creature into play under your control as though it were just cast. And X can't be 0. So you've got to at least pay 1 when you tap it to go looking. Now, combine that with this effect. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard, remove it from the game instead. So let's say you pay 2 and tap this, and you want to mill 2 cards from your opponent's deck into their library. Well, you put the first card there and see if it's a creature, but oh, it's removed from the game instead, or exiled, or however they're wording this nowadays. So it didn't get there. Well, we try again. Next one's exiled as well. Next one's exiled as well. You will never hit your target of 2 cards put into the graveyard because they never make it to the graveyard. So your entire opponent's deck just gets whittled off into nothingness, and the game ends, and you win because they ran out of cards.
I'm never playing this deck ever. Don't make me.
I didn't ask you to.
Okay, I'm just telling you right now, I am not going to play this deck.
You don't want to play with this deck or against this deck?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know I don't want to play against it. I just don't know if I want to play with it. It's scary. My luck, I'd get nothing that I needed, and that would just suck.
So this is something, since we're already running Leyline of the Voids, I can just throw in a couple of Helm of Obedience, and that serves as our backup plan. Which means if we get a Leyline of the Void into play, we can then use this to finish the game if we can get this. And this is an artifact. I can play it off of whatever color mana I have. I cannot, however, play Leyline of the Void off of white or green. So if it's not in my opening hand, I can't get that. But I've got a few Helm of Obediences kicking around. I can throw those in. And when we were going through Return to Ravnica the other day, I was reminded of this little gem, which is white, and so could be cast off of Viscera Sanctum. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards, and if a token or card would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this affects your own graveyard, but who cares? And yeah, I can cast it, and it has the same basic effect of exiling things put into the graveyard as the Leyline of the Void does, but it's white. And it costs 2, and it's an enchantment, which will also help Sarah's Sanctum. So this, if you only get 2 Leylines in your opening hand, but you find a Sanctum, I could play this. It gives me more mana from my Sanctums, and it would also complete the combo with Helm of Obedience. So I think those will be useful additions to the deck as well. Another potential useful addition, since you're playing combos, is Enlightened Tutor. Good old card from back in Mirage. Instant for 1 white. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment card. Reveal that card to all players. Shuffle your library and put the revealed card back on top of it. So it doesn't get the card to your hand, but it sets up so your next draw will be whatever artifact or enchantment in your deck you want. So that can help find the Helm of Obedience. That can help find, a Rest in Peace. That could also help find one of these if I don't get one of these early. To go make all my Leylines that I did manage to get into play into beasties. So, throw in those. I am rather low on lands here, but like I said, do what I can. Got crop rotations.
Anyone want to play this deck or play with it or against it? I don't know. Like, this scares me. His brain at building weird and scary decks scares me.
Well, there's a couple of things.
Yeah.
That I want to go over as options for this deck as well. Because right now, my problem is that, the main thing is I'm looking to get Sarah's Sanctum. My backup plan, if I don't get a Sarah's Sanctum, requires green mana. And forests are all well and good, but I don't have very many of them because most of the Leylines don't require it. But if I want to play crop rotation to get one, I probably want to be running more than 4 forests. So there's that. I've got some other options though. Where did they go? They're stuck together here. So in my recent return to Magic over the last year or so, I've discovered a few cards which I thought might also work well in this deck, or at least work well in general with Sarah's Sanctum. I've discovered they've been printing more Leylines. So, again, the ones I got just happen to be ones with white and green mana in the casting cost, so potentially they could be cast later on, which something like a blue or black Leyline couldn't, because I'm just not running land that produces that color of mana in the deck. But there's Leyline of Mutation. The ability won't be useful, but it's still a 4-cost Leyline that can start, if it's in my opening hand, right in play.
That card looks cool.
It does look cool. The ability, you may pay 1 of each color rather than the casting cost for any spell. Yeah, that's not going to help me in this deck. But it's an option, and I can use these to whittle down, say, the Leyline of Singularities that I was saying would be problematic. I can replace some of these. Am I missing maybe? Anyway, with some Leyline of Life Forces. There we go. I also got a Leyline of Hope. If you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. And as long as you have at least 7 more life than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. I don't expect I'll have a way to gain.
Have really nice art on them.
Yeah, a lot of them do. But again, it's another Leyline, and again, it's one that I could use to replace a Leyline of Singularity if I need to, which I just may. Oh, I've got another whole stack here that I forgot about, so I can get another 4 forests in there. That gets me up to 8 forests. That's a much more reasonable number if I want to go that route. Now, wait a minute.
What?
I miscounted. My top row has 6 cards in it.
Oh, no.
I'm going to have to, So this is where deck building hit some snags, and you got to make some choices for how to best run
can't
this.
see the whole
Because I
thing.
want no, it
I
doesn't
can
all
bring
fit.
it up to the side so people can see a little bit here.
If you think that'll work better,
Is that good, guys? It's
let
a little
us
bit.
know if that's a little bit better. So I can get some of these Leyline Singularities out of here, so I won't have to worry about that as often. But also another card I found recently from Duskmorn, aside from the new Leylines, was Volgaroth's Lair.
That is really cool looking.
It is cool looking. This is not the regular art. This was a fancy frame special version, but it's an enchantment land. Now, one of the things that Mirrodin Block had so much trouble with was incorporating lands that were artifact lands. And they were deemed to be just too powerful for Metalcraft, affinity for artifact type strategies. Affinity for artifact was the immediate threat. They were also really strong with cards like Clarion Academy. So this, I figured, being an enchantment land, and the first enchantment land I ever saw, I am aware that there have been a few printed before this, but not many that I'm aware of.
Wait, you said this one was from Duskmorn?
Yes.
Okay.
I was really hoping we would get one of these, and we did. It has some pros and cons. First of all, hexproof. I need to look up the definition. It's not... hexproof is not shroud, is it? So... yeah, you're searching that up for me. I see that over in the corner there.
Yep.
Means the permanent or player cannot be the target of spells or abilities controlled by your opponents. So, hexproof doesn't stop me from using a crop rotation on this to get rid of it myself if I want. So that's good to know. So that was one of my concerns with this land. The other one, though, is that it comes into play tapped. As it enters, choose a color. So I can't use it the turn I bring it into play. It comes into play tapped. But it does increase my enchantment account count, for Sarah Sanctum. And I can tap it for 1 mana of the chosen color. So I can get green or white from this, or one of my other colors. Other colors would be useless because every other card that takes other colors in this deck needs 2 of them, and I only have 1 of these in the first place. But in theory, I could run this instead of a forest, and, you know, pros and cons, it comes into play tapped, but it's an enchantment land, so there's that. I think I want to give it a try and just see how it goes, if it's worthwhile or not, since I've only got the one anyway.
Should really go to a card shop when they play games or something like that and see who might be open to.
Oh yeah,
playing
I like to pull out surprise decks once in a while at card shops or other places. Now I've got a few other.
I like watching you have nasty decks against other people.
I had one of these sleeves that had a big crease across the middle that got very prominent because I had a card with a big crease in it that I had in this sleeve for a while, and it made the middle rub on here. This one's got a minor crease at the bottom here that you can kind of see when the light hits it the right way, but it's nowhere near as bad as that one was. Unfortunately, that creased card was one of my first Tegas. I managed to trade that one away and get a better copy without a big crease in it eventually, but yeah. When your cards mark your sleeves over time, that can be a little problematic. I do have a 4th Leyline, Helm of Obedience, by the way, but it's currently in my alliances set, and for a deck like this, I'm not pulling it out. If I was really trying to optimize this for a tournament, I would probably pull out things like, dual lands and fetch lands and things like that could make sure I get my mana base a little bit more refined. But again, this is sort of a gimmick deck that I'm not too overly serious about, so I'm not going to take it that far in that regard. But let's see just how much space I have here for lands and other doodads. Anyway, so that's...
I am so sorry, guys. If I'm making you yawn, I apologize. I'm just exhausted.
4. I'll try out Volgaroth's Lair in this deck. Throw that up there with the helms for now. I've got my stack of other ley lines here. I've got a few forests. I really thought I had a couple more space for cards, but I guess that's only 9 land. Now, I said this deck doesn't need to run a lot of land because it's just focused around getting the 1. And depending on which rules you're using, a no land mana mulligan isn't that big a problem anyway either. But it is what it is. So,
oh man,
if this is exactly what I'm going to run, I've got an interesting mix here for the lands I do have. You remember the Zendikar full art lands? This was the first.
That was really cool.
It was the first set that had regular full art lands in the set, so they were popular for a while. This is one of my favorite Ice Age arts for some reason for Forest. I do like the snow-covered lands in Ice Age for the most part as well, but for the non-snow-covered ones, this was one of my favorites. Just a nice little mix of trees.
Isn't there snow in the picture?
There is snow, but it doesn't count as a snow-covered land.
Oh, okay.
And then from Lorwyn, I always just love this big old tree. This is a set with a lot of tree folk, so it's got some substantial trees in it. Anyway, Rob Alexander, great artist. So let's get some of these other ones into matching old.
Who's your favorite
sleeves.
artist for Magic the Gathering?
Oh boy.
Okay, top 3.
You know what? There are so many of the old classic artists that I grew up with. Mark Poole, Mark Tiddin. It's really hard to pick a favorite.
No, you can't even pick a top 3?
I mean, Douglas Schuler would probably might be up there. Rob Alexander's been doing stuff from the beginning too.
What about that Garfield person?
Richard Garfield?
Yeah.
He didn't do much in the way of arts, as far as I know. He was just the designer of the game.
Sorry, I thought he thought there was some of his art.
I don't think so.
Oh, there's somebody. Hildebrandt, that's the one I'm thinking of.
The Hildebrandts, I don't remember seeing a lot of their stuff early on. They did do some work in general fantasy stuff.
I just remember whenever one of those cards pops up, you say, "Oh, it's a Hildebrandt."
Yeah, so I never really noticed them before, but I've seen them more since, and that's because, again, their artwork was featured in those Lord of the Rings packs. Okay. They did a whole series where the last card in the pack was either a poster or was a Hildebrandt art. Okay. And they went back and they didn't do new artwork for that set. They'd been doing Lord of the Rings artwork for years, and they got licensing to use their existing Lord of the Rings artwork in order to use in those cards. Okay. So you've got classic pictures that were well known beforehand that they used in the cards, which was kind of neat. Tomo Magnet's an interesting little doodad from its particular time. When it enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it, remove a charge counter from it and tap it to tap target artifact or creature. Help lock things down a little. And when the Vandal enters the battlefield.
So how is everyone doing tonight? I don't know if we actually asked.
Well, I mean, people have been sort of trickling in and out, so there's that.
It rained all day here, which is much needed, so lots of places need rain right now.
This is in the right one. One of these is not, however, because I had it elsewhere. But yeah. Excuse me. The Tolarian Academy is still worth over $100, I'm pretty sure. For a while, it's been up and down and less than that, but yeah, the guy's Canadian. Again, I'm in Canada, so that's sort of the pricing I'm looking at. But the guy's Cradle has gotten up close to 1,000, and I was surprised to find Sarah Sanctum here is around 500 now a copy.
Oh wow!
So they're not so cheap anymore either. When I first picked these up just to have a play set, I think they were around $10-12, maybe 13, 14 at most. Like, sort of. So they've definitely taken an increase in value over the last few years here. The helms are going to need new sleeves as well, and so are the Rest in Peace. Where... There we go. Some Helm of Obedience action. And then here's two of the Leyline of Singularities. I can pull those out. And that'll give me two sleeves for the two Rest in Peace. Again, if I was running a serious deck back in the day, I would try and work in some sort of removal, whether it was cards like Disenchant or Swords to Plowshares in white, something like that. Could be naturalized too, since they moved the Disenchant and affected the green. But in any case, this is 60 cards. And in order to maximize my odds of drawing the combo pieces, I want to keep it at exactly 60 where possible. So, if I wanted to run more forests for a chance to get the crop rotation forest combo to get things off, I would have to cut Valgaroth's Lair or something else. And the list of something else in this deck is getting thin unless I want to reduce my number of Leylines. Again, Leyline of Singularity can be a pain, so I could just cut that one entirely and get one more forest in here. That might be a worthwhile thing to do, actually. Could try that. That still leaves me with 35 Leylines in a 60 card deck, and I want to draw 4 out of 7 cards as Leylines. That's a little lower than I'd like, to be honest. But I'm replacing more problematic with less problematic Leylines, and hopefully that could be close. Anyhow, what else can I do here? You know what? I think I'll just shuffle it up and do some sample hands and see how it looks. But yeah, this is, again, going to be a slight improvement in one sense, because it goes from a one-trick pony deck to a two-trick pony deck. So that at least gives it more potential than it had initially, even if I still can't cast the majority of the cards in it. So there's that.
I wonder if you put people to sleep
Oh,
with your calming voice.
well, I could have, you know. There's nothing too original about any of this. I don't know.
Oh, maybe my yawnings put people to sleep.
That's possible too, I suppose.
We have viewers. They're just lurking.
Yep, that's fine. Not too concerned either way.
Yeah. I just like to chat with people.
Yeah.
So.
That really shouldn't. Anyway. I should have put something else between
I'm
these
curious to
and
know
those.
what people in chat think of your deck.
Well, there's not much to think of, really. Like I said, it's a somewhat basic one-trick pony. Either it works or it doesn't, and yeah, it can have some explosive starts, but it can also be just a disaster. So that's basically what I expect of this deck. And if it's a disaster, oh man, are you struggling. Now, it's possible that something like a Leyline of the Void or a Leyline of Sanctity, or one of these other Leylines might really mess with your opponent's strategy too. So that just by a fluke of the draw, you might have something that really buys you time by messing up your opponent. But you still can't cast half the cards in the deck, almost, well, a good chunk of the cards in the deck, because you've only got access to white and green mana, and like I said, that one Volgaroth Slayer doesn't really help the situation, because you could pick another color, but you can still only get one of it. So I don't know. Has anyone else tried Volgaroth Slayer with Serra Sanctum in other contexts? It seems like it would be good. I've heard, what else have I heard of that's an enchantment land? Urza's Saga is an enchantment land, but it's also a saga, so it doesn't stay in play. So let's see what a sample hand of 7 cards here looks like if I started the game just off this. That's 6, 7. I got a Leyline of Light Forest, a Crop Rotation, Leyline of Lightning, Leyline of Anticipation, an Enlightened Tutor, and a Leyline of Punishment. So, this hand has 4 Leylines. So I could drop those. I could then, on my first turn, play a Forest, pay a green, Crop Rotation it away, go get my Serra Sanctum. Serra Sanctum somewhere. Whoop. Which I could then tap for 4 white mana and cast my only other card, Enlightened Tutor, to go get an enchantment like Opalescence, shuffle my deck and stick that on top of it. So for my next turn, I would be set, if nobody interferes with anything else I do, to untap, draw my Opalescence, tap this for 4 white, play it, and attack with my 4/4/4s on turn 2 with this opening hand.
This is scary.
It is a little scary, but at that point, if they've got any sort of counter magic, they could hold it. If they've got anything that can destroy an enchantment, they could hold it. If they've got anything to mess with my land, they could keep me from doing this too.
I'm gonna bring this a little closer.
It's fragile. Like,
it's blurry.
Well, that too.
I'm like, this is just all blurry.
So yeah, there's.
It's the focus on the camera. I'm sorry, guys.
But that hand is serviceable, and it could get me onto the board and doing some stuff. I could have done something with that hand. Obviously, the more you mulligan under the modern mulligan rules, the less cards you get in your hand, so the less likelihood you'll be able to get something done. But let's take a look at another. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Interesting.
Oh, I just realized.
No lands.
It's a holiday next Monday, so you're going to be able to do Monday Magic or Monday Night Magic. You might still want to get a nap in that day.
True. So with this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Leylines on the board, but no lands and nothing else to play really. Yeah. If I was playing second, I would get a draw, and still no lands and no way to play anything. So this is sort of a dud. I'm just sort of stuck sitting here until I draw. Oh, there's a forest. I still couldn't play anything. There's a crop rotation. I could then go get my Serra Sanctum, and I have a Leyline of White in play and Helm of Obedience in hand. So I could crop rotation, go get Serra Sanctum, tap it for 6, play Helm of Obedience, activate it. On like turn, what was that, 6? That's not great. That's really not great.
It might not be too bad if you're playing me and I'm like the hesitant player that's like, ah.
Yeah, well. That's still not great.
Yeah, well.
But again, having the Helm of Obedience as an option is more castable than some stuff, being colorless, and a little bit more lethal than even attacking with a bunch of big creatures. So, you see, I think this deck originally came from a previous deck idea I had had even before this. Because right from when I started, I'd always heard about kobolds. And when set was that? Was it Tempest?
I don't know.
That they first came out with Coat of Arms.
Hello, Juan. How are you?
Coat of Arms was an artifact for 5 that gave all your creatures +1/+1 for each other creature with the same creature type, as I recall. Or maybe it was just for the number of creatures you control. I forget which. Anyways, so the plan was, using the Gaia's Cradle over there that taps for 1 for each creature you have in play, you could do something similar where you could drop 5 kobolds on turn 1, drop your Gaia's Cradle, tap the Gaia's Cradle to play Coat of Arms, and all of a sudden all your kobolds get huge on turn 1. So again, you could do something very comparable. Oh, there's a Sir Sanctum. There's
I'm glad to hear that you're doing
2
well.
Leyline.
We're doing okay.
3
Just a little
Leylines,
tired.
4 Leylines. I don't know. You see, this is almost an ideal opening hand.
Okay.
You couldn't ask for a whole lot better than this. You don't have Leyline of the Void, but you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Leylines in your opening hand, right onto the board, and then on your first turn, Sarah's Sanctum, tap it, Opalescence. They started the turn in play, so they don't have Summoning Sickness. Boom, you can attack right in. 4 times 4 is 16 damage.
Ouch.
And then you let your opponent go, and they've got, on their next turn, they have to find a way to keep all of them from hitting them, because they'll be down to 4 life. And any of those creatures, if it hits them a second time, would be enough to finish the job. Unless they gain life, or,
This is the exact reason why I stopped playing you many years ago.
This is not one of my commonly used decks. This
I
is
know,
just
but
a
this
fun
is
deck building experience.
Oh my goodness. But this is the kind of stuff that would be like, nope, no, I forfeit. After the first hand, I'd be like, I forfeit. I like to actually play, and if I don't get a chance to play, then I would be very, very sad.
Well, I can see that as a common thing. But that's the thing with this type of deck, too, is that at least the games are fast. Pull it out for 1, make, a bit of a spectacle, and then put it away and grab something else.
It'd be a good challenge deck.
It's just nice to whip out for a surprise every once in a while.
If you're like, say, hey, betcha I can beat you in like 2 out of 3 games in so many hands or whatever, so many, you know what I mean? Like so many turns.
I don't know.
And then they'll be like, yeah, right. Then, anyways.
2 Leylines, a Forest, Crop Rotation, a Rest in Peace, and 3 Leylines, and another Rest in Peace. Ooh, that's a little ugly. So with this one, I have 3 Leylines, Forest. I can Crop Rotation the Forest to go get a Sarah's Sanctum. Where's a Sarah's Sanctum? These are definitely starting to clog up. So there's a Sarah's Sanctum. I can then tap that for 3 white and play a Rest in Peace to the board, which gives me a 4th enchantment. So now this can tap for 4 on previous turns. And I've got the graveyard removal effect. So if I draw into a Helm of Obedience, I can get it on the board with this, with 4 mana. And I've got enough to cast the Opalescence. But I'm still stuck with drawing. So that wouldn't do me anything. That wouldn't do me anything. I could play another Rest in Peace to the board.
Sorry.
Just so I've got a redundancy and another enchantment, so I can now tap for 5. This, nothing. Ooh, Enlightened Tutor. So that at that point I could make sure my next draw is either of those two options. So the safer bet would be to go for the Helm of Obedience, depending on what my opponent's blown up of mine at this point. So that is something. Oh, there's the Volgaroth Slayer, which honestly, I'm guessing at this point I'd be better with another Force than a Volgaroth Slayer. I think the slowness of it is going to be more a hindrance than a help in this particular deck. But in general, it's a great card to play alongside Sarah's Sanctum. But in this particular deck, I think I'd rather have another Forest in here. Yeah. Anyhow. So that's the gist of how this deck is supposed to run. How well it actually functions, well, that's anybody's guess. It'll depend entirely on situations. But I'm sure some of you have seen something similar before. So, I'm glad I have that deck back together. It can go alongside my big Eldrazi deck or my Eureka deck.
Somebody has a really loud car outside.
As something to pull out to stun people once in a while. What else have I got in this little box that I pulled out to look through? This is one of those boxes that I just had in storage with a bunch of random cards, and some of them were just stacks of things that are good for decks that
I wish I knew what happened to the deck I tried building.
I haven't used recently. But they're, for the most part, fairly good stuff. This is 1997, so this is a 5th edition Animate Dead, back when they typed it as a global enchantment, which then switches to a creature enchantment after you bring the thing into play, because Animate Dead creature was too confusing for people. Very strong card, though. There's another Echoing Truth. Great against token decks. Return target non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent to its owner's hand. So, you got a bunch of treasure tokens, a bunch of food tokens. You can wipe them all out, because tokens don't go back to the hand. They just sort of disintegrate when you do that. It also works nicely with token creatures of various kinds. If your opponent happens to be running something like Nazgul or Heir Apparent, where there's a bunch of the same, that would be good. Ooh, goody. Isocran Scepter. Oh, the most basic trick with this one would be to just put a fog on it, and then all of a sudden on your opponent's turn, every turn, their creatures don't deal combat damage. It's kind of nasty. But there's all kinds of other things you could do. People used to like to stick a Fire and Ice on here, or you could put a Lightning Bolt on here, or you could put, a lot of things you could put on there, to be honest. But this has definitely been power crept. But Vigilance Trample 6/6 for 6 used to be something worth doing. And when it blocks a creature, it deals damage to that creature's controller equal to its power. So when you're using it to block it, it can also hurt your opponent. That's kind of cute anyway. There's Draco from the Vault Dragons set. Used to be the highest printed casting cost in the game. I don't think it is anymore, but at one point it was. It's kind of a
creepy looking dragon, but also cool at the same time.
Yeah, it costs 2 less to play for each basic land type among the lands you control. So if you've got all 5 basic lands in play, which can be easy to do with dual lands, the casting cost goes from 16 all the way down to 6 for your 9/9 flyer.
I feel like Void would love this dragon. I don't know. Maybe.
There's a Maelstrom Archangel. Another
Wait a second.
Different sort. Constant Mists, talking about fog every turn. Buy back, sacrifice a land. Eventually you run out of lands, but that can sure be annoying and draw out a game. Matka Rioters, Domain. Power and toughness are each equal to the number of basic land types among the lands you control. So for a 3 mana, if you've got them all, it's a 5/5. At best, Surgical Extraction.
Ooh. I don't like the art. I don't like it.
No, a lot of people don't.
Oh, cringy.
But the effect can be quite strong. Choose target card in a graveyard other than a basic land card and search your opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. That player shuffles his or her library. Now, this is the same type of effect that I like to get with basic lands using the animate land combo I showed off before.
Dismember.
This is
Sounds
one.
Unpleasant.
Yeah, this is one that they redid with different art for the Monty Python set, with the Black Knight who got his limbs cut off but still wanted to keep fighting. And again, it's a Phyrexian mana card which can be used to pay. You can pay either with black mana or the mana of the matching color, or 2 life. So some of these Dismember cards you can play very cheap or for free by paying life instead of mana. And -5/-5 will kill most creatures. Diabolic Edict is another way to get rid of an opponent's creature, especially one that can't be targeted directly. Path to Exile. Remove target creature from the game. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put that card into play tapped, then shuffle his or her library. This was, at the time, perceived to be, a more fair version of Swords to Plowshares, basically, because you're giving your opponent a land drop to replace their creature instead of just a few life points. So, I don't know. Mana Leak. Not a hard counter, but fairly hard for what you're doing usually. Costs 2 and only 1 blue. And counter target spell unless its caster pays an additional 3, often in the early to even mid-game. It's hard to have just an extra mana lying around. Extra 3 mana, I should say. So, another favorite for Stronghold. Gitaxian Probe. I heard that they've actually gone and restricted this in Vintage now, too. 1 blue Phyrexian mana, so you can play with either 1 mana or 2 life. Look at target player's hand and draw a card. So basically, it replaces itself, and you get to know what's in their hand, which can be very useful information. I know for a while I experimented with Glasses of Urza, which was an artifact for 1 that you could tap to look at target player's hand. It was perceived as being a rather weak card at the time, although I do think looking at opponent's hand has become more popular than it used to be anyway. Just leave a thumbs up. Well, thanks for running in and checking in. That's great. I'm glad you came by and said hi. Couple of Tempest counterspells. Tempest wasn't my favorite art for a counterspell, but Counterspell was common in the set, so they were fairly easy to get, unlike the original ones, which were uncommons. And you still had the original card frame with that nice blue marbled
I like that
texture. And yeah, the flavor text isn't horrible. It was probably a lousy spell in the first place.
I like the blue on there. It just looks really cool.
Yeah. Mutagenic Growth, so +2/+2 to our creature until end of turn. Again, Phyrexian mana, this time green. A Crystal Ball. Ooh, is it an Icy Manipulator or a Palantir? No, neither. You just pay 1 and tap it to scry 2. Which, can have its uses too. But Kalutha Forge Master. Sacrifice 3 artifacts, search your library for an artifact card, and put that onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. I mean, the effect can help you get something broken from your deck straight onto the battlefield, but it's a lot of artifacts to sacrifice. There's a Platinum Empyrean. Your life total can't change. You can't gain life or lose life. You can't pay any amount of life except 0.
That card I kind of like.
It's interesting. 8 cost is expensive. It's an 8/8, and yeah.
Mm.
Tower of Calamities. Pay 8 and tap it to deal 12 damage to target creature. Can't hit your opponent, but 12 damage to whatever creature you want could crush a lot of things. Still, paying 8. That was the problem with Aladdin's Ring. Aladdin's Ring was only 4 damage, but it was to a creature or player, so it gave you more options. And 8 is just so much. Even if this costs half as much to play. Yahoo. There's a good old Jack in the Mox. Honestly, I like to run these sometimes just for fun. Never know what color you're going to get, or it might just blow up in your face. But it's still 0 mana, tap to add a mana, which can be quite effective if your playgroup doesn't mind running jokey cards. I always loved the art on this one. The Winter Orb.
That's cool.
Yeah. You got an angry polar bear and a happy, content polar bear just checking out what's going on. And then some dead polar bears that didn't do so well with that orb. But, yeah.
Nasty polar bears.
Yeah. No player may untap more than 1 land during his or her untap phase.
Ooh.
So that really slows things down. And back in the day, you can turn this off with your Icy Manipulator.
Oh,
so basically, I get to untap my stuff as normal if I've got this in an Icy Manipulator, but my opponent can only untap 1 land. So that big impediment for them. I remember this was one of the first counter spells that could be recurred, and that raised a lot of people's eyebrows. Even if it costs 3 to counter a spell, buy back, choose and discard 2 cards, so you're 2 for 1ing yourself. But if you've got the cards around, you can always keep a counter spell handy. Tinker. This is another card that's been restricted or banned or whatever. As you play Tinker, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card and put that artifact into play. Shuffle your library afterwards. Basically, it's just like crop rotation, except instead of for lands, it's for artifacts. Unfortunately, lands, you can play for free, any land. So they're comparable power levels, you might say. Whereas Tinker, you can sacrifice an artifact to go get any artifact, regardless of casting cost, and artifacts casting cost vary widely. So it's very easy to pitch something with this that costs 1 or 0 and go get a behemoth, 10, 12 cost thing that just is going to cause all kinds of headaches. Darksteel Citadel, the artifact land that they tried to fix by making colorless. Yeah, I mean, it's the only one that they allowed to keep playing for a while. Quicksilver Gargantuan, a 7/7 for 7. You enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's still a 7/7. It's interesting. Tendrils of Agony. This used to be the finisher of choice in Storm decks. So you could play your Lotus Petals and your Dark Rituals and get a bunch of mana going, and then play your Yawgmoth's Will and play them all again, and then play Tendrils of Agony, and opponent target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Repeated for the number of spells you had played previous to this. So if you've got the count up to 10, having your opponent lose 2 life 10 times is 20 life, and there goes most people's life count. That can just be game. Repay in kind. Each player's life total becomes the lowest life total among all players. Good for a multiplayer game, but very expensive, I suppose. Lich's Mirror. Oh, this one's interesting. If you would lose the game, instead shuffle your hand, graveyard, and all permanents you own into your library. Then draw 7 cards, and your life total becomes 20.
Oh,
so if you would die, it resets the game for you, and you're starting again from scratch. Which
good for you, bad for them.
Better than dying. But
yeah.
I suppose there's tricks you could do with it where you put cards in suspend or something, and then they'll come back after this is triggered. But Hercule's Recall. All artifacts in play owned by target player are returned to that player's hand. So if your opponent's playing an artifact deck, all of a sudden, all their stuff goes back to their hand. That's annoying.
I'm falling asleep here.
I am that boring.
No, I'm just really tired.
Yeah, well, that was me last night. So into the Royal. Nice 2-cost return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and if it was kicked, draw a card. So get some extra value there if you got the extra mana. Telerial West is neat in that it's just, a land that comes into play tapped for blue, but you can transmute it. So pay 3 and discard it to search your library for a card with converted mana cost 0, reveal it and put it into your hand. So that could be, another land, basically, you can tutor for. Or, well, I guess lands don't have mana cost. I'd have to look up whether that qualifies. I thought it did. I could be wrong on that, but I think it does for this purpose. And, or any 0-cost artifact, basically. Argent Sphinx, Metalcraft ability, if you've got 3 or more artifacts. Can be quite annoying. Have it blink in and out if it's under threat. Dagson, target artifact, creature's controller sacrifices it. That player may search his or her library for a non-creature artifact card and put it into play, and then shuffle his or her library. There are tricks you can do with this one, too. Twin Cast. Good old Fork, except now in blue. Lothos Tidemaker.
Oh my goodness.
There's a Calcite Snapper. There was a new turtle in Tarkir Dragonstorm. I was trying to remember all the different turtles that I used to use over the years. And Arabian Nights Giant Tortoise was one, and this was another 3-cost Shroud for a 1/4 and landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may switch its power and toughness until end of turn. So potentially it can hit a little harder.
You ever think about making a turtle deck? Do you have enough turtles to make a turtle deck?
Maybe. Maybe not. Here's one of the first creatures they came out with a come into play ability, and it can bounce a creature of your opponent's. That can be a rather strong ability, really. But Mana War, the little jellyfish, was a card that could for a while. There's a Harbor Serpent. Wonder. Of these, I think Filth for black, because black is more into graveyard shenanigans and reanimations. He's probably more play than Wonder. Wonder gives flying as to your creatures as long as it's in your graveyard. Anger is the other really popular one because that gives haste.
Cool Cat says Meandering Tower Shell is a fun turtle too.
Yep. I guess it would be. Goliath Sphinx. Now, is this power crept? 8/7 for 7 flying.
It's hard to see him.
Whereas now the River Regent is 6/7 for 6 with flying. And you can bounce 2 things like Mana War, double. Or you can omen it for 4 to draw some cards. Like... yeah. Oh, Halimar Depths. When that enters the battlefield, it comes into play tapped, but you can look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. This I used to use in landfall decks quite a bit because the extra come into play ability was useful. There's a Seagate Oracle. Look at the top 2 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. Neat to get some card selection. 0/4 for 5 Defender. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So basically, regrowth an instant or sorcery and get a pretty basic little wall. unless you can keep blinking it for value.
That's an interesting looking card.
Yeah, blue doesn't get a lot of mana dorks, so this is about as close as they would get typically. An artifact creature for 2 that's a 1/1 and can tap for a blue. Manic Vandal destroys an artifact when it comes into play. Precursor Golem 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature tokens onto the battlefield. So you get 3 3/3s for your 5. And whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single golem, that player copies that spell for each other golem that spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those golems. So, if your opponent lightning bolts one, it goes and gets the others. Pair of ratchet bombs. Cost 2. You can tap it to put a charge counter on ratchet bomb. Or you can tap it and sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with the converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on ratchet bomb. So, again, this can be great for dealing with a swarm of tokens, which usually have casting cost 0. So you just play it, tap it, and sacrifice it, and destroy all non-land permanents with converted mana cost 0. Could be a swarm of creature tokens. Could be food tokens, treasure tokens, whatever other tokens are going around. Here's another tutor. Search your library for a creature card and reveal that card to all players. Shuffle your deck and put the revealed card on top of it. Generally not as exciting as the mystical tutor or the enlightened tutor, but still saw a little bit of play at times. There's another tinker. Gush. This was a really popular card for a while, but I don't know. It was never one of my favorites particularly. So you may return 2 islands you control to their owner's hand instead of paying Gush's mana cost. Having an alternate way to pay for a card without having to use mana can be really, really useful. This just draws you 2 cards, though.
Mermaids or something like that, or merpeople, or merfolk in the water.
I think so.
Okay.
A couple of those. Here's a Trick Bind. Counter target activated or triggered ability.
That's an interesting looking card.
Yeah. You get Taxian Probe again. Look at target player's hand. Tezzeret's Gambit. Draw 2 cards, then proliferate. Again with the Phyrexian mana to cut down the cost. Noxious Revival. Put target card from a graveyard onto the top of its owner's library. Can be handy for getting some things back. Mutagenic Growths again. Gut Shot again. 1 damage to target creature or player. For 1 Phyrexian mana, which could be paid with 2 life. It's just such a small effect. I mean, it can add up. Energy Tap. Tap target creature you control. Add an amount of colorless mana equal to that creature's casting cost to your mana pool. So if you've got a dragon that costs 5 or 6 or something like that, that can be a major mana boost for you. Isomaro Hand of Kanda. Legendary Hound. 2/2 for 1 mana. That used to be a stat line that was worth a legendary status. Nowadays, it's not so impressive anymore. For a 2/2 creature, which is almost entirely vanilla, unless you count like the legend rule. Wall of Omens. 0/4 defender. When it enters, draw a card. For 2. Here's a good old land tax.
How many of those do you have, or is it? Oh, that's your Italian one.
It's one of the Italian ones. We've got a couple. But fairly strong card. If your opponent has more lands than you at the start of your turn, you can go through your deck and grab 3 basic lands and put them into your hand. It's a lot of cards. 7 mana for a 5/6 flying. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. If an opponent separates those into two piles. Put one of the piles into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Again, just sort of been crept. There's another Eldrazi, the Artisan of Kozilek. Seems to be one of the better costed ones. 9 for 9 with Annihilator 2. And when you cast it, you may return target creature card from your graveyard directly to the battlefield. It's getting you some value anyway. Anyone remember when fairies were a green creature type? Nowadays, fairies are usually black and blue. So this is a blast from the past. Homeland's expansion. Give your fairies an extra toughness, and you can tap it to give them an extra attack. Aeron the Relentless. Back before haste was around, Aeron had that effect, and it was somewhat strong, really, to get 5 for a creature that can attack in for 5 right away as soon as you play it. Assuming the cabin adjustment didn't get to him, but yeah. Regenerate is definitely a strong ability, but paying 3 red to do it definitely limits its usefulness. Then we got another hasty creature, or unaffected by summoning sickness, as the case may be. We'll take Key. Ensur Ruins is really cool. Basically, any sort of tribal deck where your opponent's playing dragons or goblins or whatever, you can lock them down. Choose a creature type when you play it. Creatures of the chosen type do not untap during their controller's untap phase. So all those mana elves, if you're playing an elf deck or something, all of a sudden they're not going to untap on you. This particular copy also happens to be a rather interesting miscut. Look at that side edge.
Ooh,
yeah,
ouch.
that is interesting. And I've had it for a very long time. I forget if I pulled this one right out of a pack myself. I might have. But yeah, now there's a miscut for you. Overwhelming Intellect. 6 cost, counter target creature spell. Draw cards equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Another Clarion Champion, Volcanic Dragon. This was originally back in a Mirage. 4/4 flying haste for 6. This is definitely underwhelming today. There's a premium deck Fire and Lightning Fireball foil. Hammer of Bolgradan. This was from Mirage originally. 3 damage to target creature or player for 3.
Looks neat.
And you can pay 5 if it's in your graveyard to return Hammer of Bolgradan from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, you have to do it during your upkeep. But if you've got the 8 mana, you could bring it back for 5 and then hit something for 3 and do that every single turn. Darksteel Axe, another creature buffer. Requillery Tower, you have no maximum hand size. Don't have to worry about discarding down to 7. The Grinning Ingus. Pay a red. Return Grinning Ingus to its owner's hand to add its casting cost to your mana pool. Play this ability only anytime you could play a sorcery. So it's a good way to get some extra mana. It is weird, but it is interesting. And the border here was the style they used in Future Sight as sort of a predicted, future frame. Didn't really pan out. Avacyn's Pilgrim. Tap for a white on a 1/1 green creature for 1. Always need to get a little bit of mana fixing in there. So we had that. Wild Ricochet. Argivian Restoration. Return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ooh, Basalt Monolith. Hard to read the rest unless you know German. I only ever opened a couple of actual revised booster packs, and I remember two of them that I was able to get a hold of were German ones that my local card shop brought in. And I know a few people who got cards from that box. I've still got a few of them kicking around. This was one of my better pulls, an uncommon. Pass up Monolith's not a bad card. You can tap it for 3 colorless or pay 3 colorless to untap it. But, yeah, not exactly the dual land that you'd hope for. There's a Thran Dynamo. Just tap it for 3 colorless. Untaps as normal, but costs 4 to play. Avatar Fury. Avatar of Despair was probably the most famous avatar, but this one probably saw the most play among my immediate play group. 8 cost for a 6/6 flying with fire breathing. But if an opponent controls 7 or more lands, which in a late game was not unusual back then, it costs 6 less to play. So all of a sudden you're getting your 6/6 flying fire breathing avatar for just 2 mana. Kamal Pit Fighter. Again, haste. 6/1, so sort of a ball lightning one, except it didn't automatically die. They had to actually kill it to get rid of it. But it was a legend. And if attacking in for your 6 wasn't immediately feasible without dying, you could opt to just tap it to do 3 damage to a creature or player. Either free up some space for itself or just deal with a problematic thing. Then there's his sister, Jessica, Warrior Adept. Only costs 4 for 3/1, haste, and first strike. And you can tap it to deal 1 damage to a creature or a player. And this, yeah, my brother and I both come from Balthor's Forge. Kamal has a temper of fire, and I have a temper of steel. And unfortunately, Jessica became corrupted into Phage the Untouchable. So, yeah, that was a sad story arc. Oxidia Scrap Melter, another destroy an artifact when it comes into play. But this time a 3/3 for 4 instead of a 2/2 for 3. Seagate Oracle again. Shivan Phoenix can recur again. When Shivan Phoenix is put into a graveyard from play, return it to its owner's hand. Sort of like Firestorm Phoenix, except it's a 3/4 instead of a 3/2. Vexing Slusher. I always thought the foil pattern on this one was kind of neat. Shadow War. Goblin Shaman. Can't be countered. You can pay either green or red. Target spell can't be countered by spells or abilities. So that's an anti-counter spell type card. Jayla Ballard. You can pay different amounts and discard a card for different effects. Kind of neat. Here's some Snow-Covered Mountains from Cold Snap. I do like the art on this one. The little drake on the peak there. Some more foily mountains. I used to like this when I did play like 5-color decks. Pentad Prism. Pay 2 to play it, so it's nice and cheap. Sunburst. This comes into play with a charge counter on it for each color of mana used to pay its casting cost. So as long as you could find 2 different colors, and then you can remove a charge counter from it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So let's say you only had the white and the green from that Leyline deck. You could play this, get its 2 counters, and then take them off and get either 2 red for another Leyline you couldn't play, or a black and a blue, and try and get your one of each color. There's an Ice Age Incinerate. Matron of Stormglad. Legendary. This was one of the first non-multicolored legendaries out there too. I mean, at this point, Homelands had already been out, but I owned or had it. No, Homelands came out after Ice Age. I'm wrong on that. So, Matron. If Matron attacks, all other attacking creatures get +X/+X. until end of turn, where X is equal to the number of other attacking creatures. If it blocks, all other blocking creatures get a buff too, similarly. There's a Blood Knight. This is a take on the old White Knight and Black Knight. First strike protection from white. 2/2 for 2. Taurine Mauler, Shapeshifter that only costs 3. Another Dagson, Darksteel Ingot, Indestructible Artifact, and tap for 1 mana of any color. Stone Idol Trap. These idle traps, or no, just traps in general. Yeah. Cost 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. Put a 6/12 colorless construct artifact onto the battlefield. Exile at the beginning of your next end step. So, surprise blocker type situation. Stone Rains. Rakamar, get hasty little elements. That's hasty itself. Blood Moon, another big tournament card to help deal with people with problematic lands or just a mana base that's too far diversified and has to run on a lot of non-basics. All non-basic lands become mountains. So if you're not playing red, that's extra annoying.
Would that include their own cards too?
Yep. All non-basic lands. So unless you're running basic, forests and mountains and islands or whatever, any other lands basically get turned into mountains.
Yeah, figured.
There's Arc Slogger. I used to use this occasionally. Remove the top 10 cards of your library from the game to have it deal 2 damage to target creature or player. You could definitely run your own deck out in a hurry if that's what you want it to do. There's an Electrolyze, 3 cost, instant 2 damage, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or players, and draw a card. Fanning the Flames, again, buyback was a new thing at this time. So 2 red and X to deal X damage to a creature or player, and you can buy it back for 3. So basically, as soon as you have 6 mana, you could play this for 1 each turn, get a 7th for 2 each turn, etc. If you've got nothing else better to do. Pillage, bury an artifact or land. Nice to get some diversity on land destruction. Skeletal Scrying. Yeah, drawing up like there. Mog Fanatic. Must be getting tired myself. This used to be a tournament level card around the same time as, Tempest Blocks. So around the same time as Jackal Puck. If you're playing Goblins, there's a lot more tribal stuff you could do. But just being able to sacrifice it to do 1 damage to target creature or player, back when things used the stack, you could assign its combat damage or whatever, and then still get the other ability out of it. Squee Goblin Nabob from Arcadian Mask. 3 cost, 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Squee Goblin Nabob is in your graveyard, you may return Squee to your hand. So, there's that. Laboratory Maniac. These are fun. People built the whole decks around this card as another 2-card win condition sometimes. So 2/2 for 3. And if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So you find a way to get rid of your whole library and then have this guy in play and try and draw a card, and you win. Thought Lash was a popular way to get rid of your library. Cumulative upkeep, remove a card in your library from the game. If you do not, remove your library from the game and bury Thought Lash. So you just bring this out, don't pay the upkeep, and whoop, there goes your library. You can also pay 0 to remove the top card of your library from the game to prevent damage to you. It's a very bizarre concept. But Oh, and then good old Brainstorm. 1 mana. This was supposed to be the fixed Ancestral Recall, which instead of just paying a blue to draw 3 cards, gets you pay a blue, draw 3 cards, then take 2 cards from your hand and put them on top of your library in any order. So yeah, there's a few goodies. I'll put back the extra Leylines of the Void I'm not using right now.
Collection.
Oh yeah, and this is just one little box of random stuff. A lot of it would be very playable depending on the situation, or used to be. And then we've got for a divider here, one of these dual deck summary things with the decks from Elsbeth versus Tezzeret. This was one of my favorite ones. I think I actually got 2 copies of this dual deck because the Elsbeth deck, I think, came with Swords to Plowshares in it, and the Tezzeret deck had something too. I'm just forgetting. Well, Tezzeret the Seeker is itself a fairly strong planeswalker if you've got the right cards to combo with it. Anyway, not the most fascinating deck to play with because, like I said, it's so simple. Can you assemble what you need out of your opening hand is basically the name of the game. So I'll probably give it a couple more games before I sub out the Valgroth Slayer for another Forest, which I think is better in this deck, but just to keep this in proximity to the Serra's Sanctums for now, I'll keep it in here for now and give it a bit more opportunity to prove itself. So like I say, sometimes something like this can really have an impact. Excuse me.
So if you're going into a store where they have like a regular playing group, how would you want to introduce yourself to that playing group if nobody really knows you? Would you do something crazy, like a deck that's just nuts? Or something silly? Or what would you do?
It depends. Probably chat for a bit, get an idea, watch what they're
And then
playing.
decide?
You know, honestly, some people are just against land destruction, so I could avoid that. If you're against infinite combos, I could avoid that too. If you're against, but there's so many options in this game, and you can't pretend, or you can't build a deck that's going to protect you from everything. So
No, I know, but
you
I mean,
always find some sort of weakness.
I mean, just some way to introduce yourself to the group. So you're going to be like, do you want to do a silly deck or something that's crazy or something that's
I mean, if you're playing just sort of casual, or if you're playing some quick matches just for fun and to experience new ideas, it depends what the people are looking to do. So yeah, definitely lots of stuff out there. A lot of strong cards kicking around from different time periods.
Going with a vintage deck if they're all like young people and new to the game.
Sometimes that can be interesting. Give them something to think about if you're playing a strategy they've never seen before. Interesting ways to make proxies. Other random stuff. And then we're into my older things. Yeah, the Urza's Tron lands. Urza's lands in general have got sort of a different meaning to them now, which can include things like Urza's Saga and these and whatnot. But I still think of Urza's lands sometimes as those Urza's Saga lands we just looked at, the Tolarian Academy, the Serra's Sanctum, and the Gaia's Cradle. They're all different, but different can be interesting too. Anyhow, I do like some of these old classics. There's that giant tortoise I was talking about. I'd go with the is it Ambling or Shambling Stormshill? I think can draw you a lot of cards if you keep it going.
How was it that you came across this card again?
The Jazam?
Yeah.
That same card shop that had the 3 DCI foil Gaia's Cradles I mentioned.
Okay.
Got this in one day. And yeah, it's just one of those legendary cards that you rarely get the chance to grab one of. And just seeing it there in the case, I decided to splurge a little and pick it up. So
you bought it or you?
Yeah, I bought it, but it was back, when I was going to university, and so sometimes I had a little cash in my pocket.
That was before we were married or dating, I mean.
Yeah, and obviously, it's probably worth 10 times what I paid for it at least now, so
I probably wouldn't have let you pick that up
so bad of it at the time.
I wasn't around yet.
No. But there we go. It's just one of those classic pieces of Magic history and one of the most famous cards from Arabian Nights, the first expansion. So I'm glad I have one. Ali's another famous one, although he's never saw as much play, although there was a lot of worries about him. Oh, and then we've got some cards here that I was going to talk about for shorts at one point, but never quite got there.
I like that card.
Yeah, the Mesopegasus is a nice little card. Those have been around since 4th edition, and I always liked playing them.
Oh, wait, what's that one over there? I know I've seen all of these before.
Which one?
The serpent one or the worm.
Craw worm?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a hole in my old stuff for when we used to build decks out of the binder. I still hope to do some of that again. This is the old classic craw worm. So basically, green has always been known for large creatures, and this was a common. That was one of the bigger ones right from Alpha, basically. But 6 for a 6/4 sure doesn't cut it anymore. I think the recent Foundation set had a creature that's twice this size for that cost. So now for your 6 mana, if you're looking for a vanilla creature, you can get a 12/8. So yeah, it just shows you where these old cards are at now.
A lot of neat looking art and just, I don't know. That one's kind of gross, but also kind of cool.
It is.
It's a weird, the art is just kind of like, not totally repulsive, but at the same time, it's like, ew. I don't know. I mean,
it's not supposed to be appealing, but it's,
But it's also really, like, the art is just pretty impressive with how they kind of did that. Makes you want to keep looking, but at the same time, it's like, but why? Why am I still looking?
Yeah, a lot of the old
goodies. Yeah, that one. So, I mean, a real, wow.
Yeah. Nobody's got a Howling Mind anymore these days. It's honestly, that card's been printed so many times. It's not even funny.
Is this like...
I forgot I had this when I was first going through and collecting my old stuff.
Yeah.
I had this in a little batch of them where I had a 2nd edition, which is the unlimited. I had a 3rd edition revised, a 4th edition, and a 5th edition. Mm-hmm. So one from each of 4 different base sets, all with the same art, as a play set just somewhere in my cards. So you never know.
That one's cool.
It is. We've done a short on that one. It's really beat up.
It's still kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. Chaos Orbital is fun. Icy Manipulator. Again, just some of the classics. These are all collector's edition. I couldn't afford real ones. Although it's funny now, even collector's edition fake cards are actually starting to creep up in value. So you can tell collector's edition by the square cut corners and the back of the card has got the gold border and the collector's edition branding on them.
It seems weird, like, to have square.
And you bought it as a box set where you got the whole set in one box. So, but I didn't get one, but I picked up a few singles. At the time, I'd gotten my 3 favorite pieces of power, and I knew I was not going to be able to afford to ever get the other ones, so I got the little cheap rip-off versions of a couple of the Moxes that I figured I'd be most likely to play, and called it at that. So, but yeah, there was the other 2 pieces that I'd managed to collect over the years, Time Walk and the Ancestral Recall, which I traded my first Alliances set for, so I still think that was a great trade.
Are you getting all nostalgic?
Oh, a little bit, but just thumbing through what's in front of me. But I'm getting tired, so I should probably wrap this up.
Oh, isn't this the card that Deep Pocket Monster opened?
Yeah, I think he opened one of those, and probably I think he was opening a revised pack.
Ah, okay.
So different edition, but
In one of his shorts that he did.
it's definitely like it used to be a $10 card. It was a good card, but it wasn't one of the top cards in the set. Now it's one of the best cards you can pull out of revised. But
yeah,
anyway,
that was just kind of cool to see him open it and then get that card. It's like, oh wow.
yeah. And this was the first ever alpha card I got. I picked up a handful of what I thought were betas, but this one has the different wider corners, so it stuck out like a sore thumb.
Mm.
Yeah, I like the old first, second edition stuff. I wish I had more, but I like the stuff I got, and I try and take care of it. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the first couple of expansions, too, back to the Arabian Nights, back to the Antiquities. Lots of fun little odds and ends.
This one, I don't know why I remember that one so much. Why do I remember that one?
Strip Mine has been...
You used to play with that, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just standard. It was a classic way to deal with troublesome lands or to try to get an advantage if your opponent was short on colors or whatever. Strip Mine used to be in almost every deck for a long time. Mishra's Factory, the original man land that could turn into a creature when you needed it.
Yeah. Windlehaven.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. Different little legendary lands that had a bonus ability.
Mana Drain.
Yeah. Chains of Mephistopheles. I had an Underworld Dreams, and I had one of these in my black deck, and that's what got me through when Time Spiral circled back to when Tolarian Academy first came out, and people played Time Spiral decks and all that craziness to draw through their deck to find all the stuff, build up a mana, and then draw your deck out. Well, both those cards, the Chains of Mephistopheles or the Underworld Dreams, could stop that dead in its tracks, and I could drop either one on turn 1 with a Dark Ritual. Chains of Mephistopheles could come out on turn 2 without one, and that would just keep all that in check. But, yeah, you don't get quite the same sort of combo craziness these days, because now everything's creature-based. So everything takes a turn or two to build, but there's so many infinite combos out there now too that I just lose track of. I like in some ways the older, simpler days of Magic where a creature was just a creature that you would attack with, and that was the main threat for the most part. And if it wasn't, then it was something goofy like Time Elemental with drawbacks, and it was obviously not just a beat stick on top of that. But now you've got everything from the nimble pilferer who can generate you all kinds of extra advantage to other doodads make these weird combos. Anyway, we had great fun. There's another land tax moat. White's always had some strong enchantments. More odds and ends. If you're not looking closely, and I drop this, you might just think it's a swamp. When it's actually a German drudge skeleton. German revised had a few oddities.
Oh, they used the wrong picture for the card?
Wrong picture and card frame. Just like with English revised, they used the wrong picture and card frame for the Serendib the Djinn. They used the picture and card frame from the green.
That could be a fun short, just like kind of saying, hey, did you know? And just talk about that card.
Yeah, it could be.
I like when people do videos like that, just a little bit of Useless trivia, I guess.
Where's the black? There we go. So yeah, this was really that. I just grabbed a swamp border and picture instead, but that's what it was supposed to be. And this one is supposed to be something else. But they copied the picture and color border from this card instead, which is not at all what it was supposed to be. See, the Serendib is a 3/4 flying that deals you 1 damage during your upkeep for a blue and 2, whereas the original If Bifafreet here costs 4, 2 green and 2 for a 3/3 flyer, and as long as it's in play, any player can pay green mana to have it deal 1 damage to each player and each flying creature, so it can basically mini Hurricane for as much green mana as any player wants to pump into it at any time, which if your opponent has 3 green usually means this thing's going to be dying and leaving the battlefield pretty quick. But I still like it. It's a fun card, but it's a very different card than this was supposed to be. And growing up, I never saw an original Serendib, so this is just the art that what I always thought it was supposed to look like, but yeah, not the case.
Mm. Oh. Well.
Anyhow.
So, I'm assuming this is nearing the end of...
Yeah, just winding down.
What are you thinking about doing for next Monday?
I hadn't come up with a plan yet, to be honest.
Okay. It's going to be a holiday, but we're going to still do a stream.
Yeah. We'll figure something out. People want talking about a tutorial for how to play. Well,
you could do that.
We could. I could come up with something for that. We did a little bit of deck building today. Deck building is a whole sort of different skill, and the deck I built today was nothing like a regular deck. Usually a regular deck.
I never did very well building decks. I tried, and then I could never make it work.
Yeah. I mean, the basics are you pick your colors, you make sure you got land for those colors, you try and keep your land base to at least a third of the total cards in the deck, but that's all you've got sometimes. Wow, this is bouncing around as I'm trying to adjust it.
This one's really...
That's a little bit too zoomed in for my taste.
Just put it back a bit.
I'm trying.
Here.
Mm.
Okay. Move you back. There we go.
There's
some stuff in the way.
Yeah. Gesundheit.
Mm.
Anyway, thanks for coming out, those who did. I know it's been a pretty low-key stream, really.
Yeah.
But I thought there's enough history and stuff about those old cards as I was rebuilding that deck. I want to try out a few of the new cards in it, which seemed to be useful. And yeah, it was just a deck that I had fond memories of pulling out as a surprise, and I wanted to have that option available. Because who knows, I might be stopping in at a card shop one day for a game. And I like to whip out a surprise deck every once in a while. So this way I've got more options to do so.
So on Thursday... Oh, Thursday you're working. So I'm not sure when I'm going to stream, if I want to do it like in the morning when you're there, like before you go to bed, or just
maybe
regular
for a
afternoon.
little bit.
But we'll see. Probably still be in the afternoon.
Right.
Unless we do a little quick pop up in the morning, but probably not. Who knows? We'll see how things are going. Could be chaotic.
Could be.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what we're doing yet.
Anyway, have a good night, and maybe you found an old Leyline that you'd forgotten about in this deck. Some of them have actually been useful for some people, so some of those old Leylines, I probably picked them up for $1 or $2 each back when they first came out. That's about what the Shadowmoor ones that came out just last year are going for now. But over time, they get forgotten about, and all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, I could use that for this deck. they're getting harder to find, so the value creeps up on some of them. Some of them are $4 cards, $3 cards. Some of them are up to $8 now. Who knows? And of course, the really popular ones tend to get reprinted, like Land of the Void. There, you know, but
it's because take a picture and send
it's
them
because
to
it's
Void.
useful. That's why. So, or more generally useful.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No worries. Anyway, thanks for stopping in. For those of you who did, and
I'm not gonna
I hope it was
tonight, though.
interesting or informative to you.
Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for lurking and joining us. If you have any questions,
and if you ever see someone dump half their hand in ley lines at the start of a game, you might have an idea what to watch out for in the coming turns now. You never know.
If you do have any questions, feel free to leave a comment after the stream's over, and then we will get back to you.
We'll try.
Yeah, we'll try. We might have to wait for him because I might not know the answer if it's a magic question. So have a good night. We'll see you guys soon, hopefully Thursday.
Hopefully.
And have a great week. Bye for now. I'm just gonna not.
Toodaloo.